It was around 2019, like 5 years ago, when I asked my dad for a PC. Like most times, he said no, okay? He said he couldn't just gift it to me, but he was willing to make a deal. He said, if you can make 3 videos and you can edit them and you can make them like at least 5 minutes long each, then I will give you my old PC. At the time, I had this like 100 or 200 pound laptop. Like it was a piece of shit. And I had no like editing software, no experience with editing whatsoever. So I thought 3 videos, like I could hardly do 1. I had no experience with editing whatsoever. I've never touched an editing software before. As far as I knew, there was a thing called Adobe Premiere Pro, but I had never touched it. So 1 was bad enough. 3 was like unheard of for me. Like I thought this was the only chance I would ever get to get a PC in my life, so I took it. I was recording my own videos at the time. I made like these shitty Fortnite montages with my friends. I would literally just put these clips together with no editing, maybe like a preset graphic on like the top right of the screen to just show like the file name. And by the way, I didn't go through like 1 or 2 or even like 3 free softwares. I went through 6. It took 6 free editing softwares just to get me to export like 3 5-minute videos with just clips that were put together, because these things kept crashing. Like obviously they were just free software, so they probably weren't that good, but they crashed no matter what. Like this was 6, like at least 1 of them would have been good, but no, some of them were trials, so I would have like a certain amount of times I could open up the software. So when it would crash and I would open up again, it would say, okay, you have 4 times, and then it'd crash and I'd have 3 times, and I'd have to go through like software over software. Now eventually I finished it, I think after a couple months, maybe 3 or 4 months. I gave it to my dad and he said that he didn't believe that I would actually do it. Like he thought with all these free softwares I would never have gotten it done. But I did get the PC and I was over the moon. I immediately set this up in my room. I got everything I needed. I got stuff like Discord. I got all the games that I wanted. I just wanted to download everything I could possibly get. Fast forward like a year, I think I stopped making my own videos and I started editing for other people. And when I came across like this entire editing community, I started to notice like everyone was so much better than me. Everybody and their grandmother was using plugins. It was insane. It was almost like that was sort of the standard where like you had to get plugins if you wanted to make it as an editor. And obviously I got them. I got like 1 or 2 plugins and I started to get completely fucked over. Like I was having trouble editing before with the laptop, so now when I moved to the PC I just had the same problems. It would be nothing but crash after crash after glitch after crash. It almost felt like it did nothing to serve me except like just fuck me over. So I thought, why the hell is this like the standard? Why do people use this stuff? And this wasn't helping, considering the PC that I got wasn't actually that good. My dad described it to me as like, it's the best PC you're gonna get. When I checked, yeah, that would have been like the best PC in 2009. Like I think it was something like an i3 or i5 and a 980 GTX. It was 32 gigs of RAM, but the RAM was like 3000 megahertz and had like a latency of 12, which if you don't know, it's basically complete horseshit. Because essentially if you have more RAM but it's still slow, that's gonna be just as bad as having like slow RAM with like 16 gigs. Because at the end of the day, those extra 16 don't matter if they're not getting stuff done on time. I had a very slow and delayed RAM, my graphics card was old as fuck, and the PC in general was just a piece of shit. If you're an editor and you use plugins, I want you to think to yourself, is this actually serving me or is it actually screwing me? You might not notice it because crashes are usually just very common with After Effects and Premiere and stuff. Adobe's got a track record for this sort of things. So you think that whenever you crash, you think, oh, it's just the software. But you never seem to go and blame the plugins. So I want you to think to yourself, how often do you crash since you've gotten those plugins? Because this stuff screws you over more than you think. Because it's not just slow software, but it's slow rendering and it damages your hardware. Your file explorer starts getting slow, your RAM starts getting slow. And if you think that it's worth it because of like the results you're getting with your visuals, then you're completely wrong. You're either completely misguided or you're so deluded by what you're using because you think that your tools are gonna make the man. There's this footballer called Andrea Pirlo, and what he says is that footballers don't play with their feet, they play with their minds. Their feet are just the tools. I remember hearing that years ago, but it still sticks with me to this day. Editors aren't defined by like what effects or plugins or softwares they use, they're evaluated by their mind and their creativity. Because look at me, I don't use like the fanciest plugins or extensions or like extra software. I just stick to the classic Premiere and After Effects and all their vanilla effects. Because I've gotten to the point where I can work with my dream clients and start charging them like 2,000 or 3,000 and maybe even over that per video. And I don't have to shoot myself in the foot by installing these super slow laggy plugins just to fucking save my ass. Because I don't rely on my tools, I rely on myself. Because like I said, I used to use plugins, but I trusted myself to take a step back and try something completely new. Because when I did, I found out that I didn't need plugins at all. I was perfectly okay surviving without them. I know you must be thinking like, oh, but I can't give them up. Like I'm too good. Like all the presets that I use and all the effects that I use, like they're so good and they make my work like super expensive. But I can't give them up. They're too valuable. They make my videos look so good because it is very doable. Plugins are literally like drugs. Think what you want of that, but hear me out. When editors start using them, they think that their work just gets so much better with time. They think they just skyrockets amongst all editors when they start using them. So they get like hooked. They keep using them and using them to the point where every single like preset they come across or every single time they see an effect, somebody's used a plugin for it. So they go and get that plugin and they fuck themselves even more and more and more and more to the point where they feel like they can't survive without it. Back when I was using plugins, there was this one time where I was telling people about my work. Like I'd say that I'm an editor and they would be like, oh, that's cool. So can you edit right now? And I was like, what do you mean? I want to see you edit. Like I want to see how cool it would be. And I said to them like, oh, I can't because I'm not at home. I need to use like all my plugins and stuff. Like I need to use my PC. And they're like, what do you mean? Like, is there like special stuff on your PC? I was like, yeah. So basically I can't edit without them. And they said to me, isn't the point of an editor for you to like adapt and, you know, learn? And then I started saying stuff like, oh, it's not that easy or you wouldn't get it. And then I just started being in denial to the point that where I realized like, that's actually true. If I went out and I just found like some random PC with like Premiere on it, let's say, and I couldn't edit on it purely because I thought that I was just like, I had to get plugins. Like I can't edit without them. Then I'm obviously hooked and I'm obviously not a good editor. If this is just like you, if you think that you go to a random PC without plugins but with Premiere Pro and you can't edit, then you're a shit editor and you don't realize it. You need to wake up and realize that your tools don't make you. It's your creativity and your brain and how you work. I recommend you quit as soon as possible so you can realize the creativity that you hold. I was about like a year or two into my career when I started removing plugins from my workflow. I was like super burnt out at this point and I was charging, I think, like between 300 to 500 per video. And all of a sudden this like random client comes across and says, hey man, I'm working with like this big team. We want you to be the editor. And I was like, okay, well then like what's your budget and stuff? They were like, okay, we have a half an hour video for you and we're gonna pay you $1,000. This was the first time I've ever been paid $1,000. It was huge to me. Now some of you made this story, but essentially I took a step back and I stopped using plugins. And when I took on this video, I thought, you know, I'm already super burnt out. So taking something this big, I'm just gonna get even more demotivated and I'm not gonna make a good video out of this and like nobody wins. So I thought I'd just step back and think, okay, how about I just remove plugins? So I just thought I'm gonna try something out. I'm gonna challenge myself. I'm not gonna use plugins at all. And when I did, I ended up making the best video ever. Like I think to this day, it's one of my favorite videos that I've ever made. Unfortunately, things went left because it was a shitty client, but at the end of the day, I made an incredible video. And I was super happy with myself because I realized the potential that I had if I just like took away the things that I was super addicted to. Now, I know I've just said all of that, but I'm not like some complete plugin Nazi where I think if you use them, then you're like the scum of the earth and you should never like take on client work ever again. I think when you're starting out, you're completely limiting yourself. You add this super high threshold where you think that this should be the standard to the point where you just completely demotivate yourself and you're just killing your enjoyment of learning everything about your editing software. Like one thing that I do a lot, like even to this day, I'll just open up Premiere and I'll just like start playing with the effects and see if I can make some cool animation. Because the truth is I actually enjoy editing. Like I'll just make stuff for the fun of it. If you're new to editing, then chances are you have a pretty shit PC and your hardware is also shit, just like mine was. So if you're taking plugins now and you really think that it's good for you, then you're wrong. You're shooting yourself in the foot here. Stop using plugins and try it out. You're joining the editing scene and already the first thing you do is you start taking these drugs to perform better. When somebody joins the gym, they start doing reps, they start doing exercise, they start like enjoying it. They're in this season of just learning and pure enjoyment. When you join the gym, the first thing you don't do is go to the guy in the corner and say, hey man, give me some fucking steroids. I need to fucking like put this stuff in me. Pause. So why the fuck would you treat it the same with editing? Why the fuck is the first thing you do take some like performance enhancing drugs? Take a step back, learn the software, and then start to find your flair and your creativity in your own editing style. That's how you improve. You don't take the shortcut by taking all these fucking drugs. Now you're gonna see like a lot of successful and big editors use plugins, and that's fine. Like they're different. They're not starting out like you are. They're at a point where their PCs are costing like fucking $8,000, so they can like A, afford it, and B, they can handle it, and C, they've probably done this before to the point where they didn't use plugins and they just wanted to find their own style, and that's what they did. Despite everything I said, plugins aren't like the end of the world. They're just generally not as convenient as your actual software, amongst everything else that I said with, you know, starting out. But for example, there's this plugin called Element 3D that I enjoy using because it doesn't fuck over my software, it doesn't fuck over my hardware, and it's like the most convenient thing to use if you want to use like 3D objects or 3D text. If somebody goes and does that and has like the same reasons, then I'm not gonna say like, what the fuck are you doing, man? Like these are plugins, these are bad for you. But if you're starting out and the first thing you do is like get all these plugins just because you see other people doing it, then I'm thinking, hey, what the fuck are you doing, bro? You see one guy do this, you're just gonna copy him? Okay, if you jumped off a bridge, would you fucking jump? You probably fucking would. And to be honest, like, again, I was just like you. I was like stupid enough to do the same thing. My issue is that I learned far too late. If I learned this earlier, my editing style would probably be a lot more advanced than it is now. I would have made so many better projects, and my editing probably would have been much better than it is now. But because I shot myself in the foot and I took too long to realize it, that has now come back to bite me in the ass. Don't let the attraction of all these expensive and harmful plugins blind your sight. We're editors. We are creatives for a reason. We shouldn't just be blindly following the path that everyone else does, because that's not creative. You want to start getting creative? You want to start making work that you can truly be proud of, and work that you can look at and say, yeah, I fucking made that, bro. And I made that without plugins. I didn't need to rely on that shit. Take one step back if you want to take 2 steps forward. You got this, bro. I believe in you. Go and do that now, okay? Go and make an edit without plugins and show it to me. Good luck, and I believe in you, bro.